Is this thing working? Are we live? It looks like we're live. What's going on, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic whatever day it is you're watching this. And if it's your first time hanging out on Two Wheel Tuesdays, thanks for stopping by. It's a live show, so you never really know what's going to happen. Typically on a Two Wheel Tuesday, I leave the conversation primarily to motorcycles. Sometimes we'll get a little bit off the rails, but usually it's typically motorcycles. But it is live, so you never really know. I try to interact with you guys as much as I can. The only way I can interact is through the live show. So in saying all that, hope you're having a fantastic day. Now, there are a few things we can talk about. It's going to be a little bit of a short show this evening. There's a few things that are out right now that I wanted to discuss. Primarily wanted to talk about some of the bikes that I've been riding lately and what those bikes kind of represent to me, at least a little bit, and some things that I'm still trying to work my head around when it comes to some of these more modern. It could be the modern retro, the modern, really bikes more like where am I at with the Royal Enfields, for example, versus Triumph? Where am I at with Harley Davidson now that I've ridden that Pan America? And what's going on with these super middleweights? So that's really what I wanted to chat with you guys about. So before I get too deep, want to check in with the early birds. Ryan is in. Skiz, got the flex. Ball guy with the shades. Hope you boys are doing good. So this is kind of where I'm at. So I wanted to talk about Royal Enfield versus Triumph. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that little border skirmish, if you will, is this. When you start to look at the Royal Enfield lineup right now, it is getting better and better still. My experience with the Continental GT was enough to kind of slide me into the into the Royal Enfield's verse, if you will. Started looking up all the 350s, the 650s, getting an idea for what kind of bikes that company makes. And the more that I was looking into it, the more that I got to thinking that, Royal Enfield is kind of more Triumph than Triumph is. I mean, if you think about it, Triumph, when you buy a Bonneville T100 or a T120, you're buying into a certain nostalgia, aren't you? I mean, you're buying presumably a bike that makes more power than they did back in the day. It's got more refinement, whatever the case is. But in essence, you're buying into that experience. And that's great. But Triumph just keeps taking it further and further and further with different types of motorcycles. We've got the Triumph Tiger series of the sport utility bikes or the sport touring bike segment. You've got the one and only now Speed Triple RS, which is a pretty killer hyper naked bike. You've got the Street Triple, which is in essence the old 675 chassis and swing arm, yet without a fairing. Odd. But anyway, you've got that motorcycle that's out and about. And then you've got, the Rocket 3, and the rest of the story with that. It's just a lot of different types of bikes, but they kind of seem to hinge on that nostalgia bait that you always kind of slide on. But what I will say is this, what Royal Enfield does is they make old motorcycles, basically. I mean, yeah, they've got fuel injection, but for the most part, you're looking at technology that really never did pass up the 1960s. I mean, it's about as Amish of a motorcycle as you can get, I would venture to say. And so the more I'm looking into that brand, the more I'm kind of getting it a little bit. And now that Royal Enfield is going to be releasing that 750cc parallel twin, that whole lineup of motorcycles is going to get real interesting real quickly. And the reason why I say that is because those bikes are going to be lighter, a bit more flickable, significantly less expensive. So already a good start, but they're going to offer up the most honest to goodness vintage riding experience that money can buy. So how does Triumph answer that? That's kind of a pretty strong play if you think about it. But if you're into those kind of motorcycles, look, if you're a Triumph guy, you're a Triumph guy. But you cannot argue that Royal Enfield, with how they're making bikes now and how they position themselves in the marketplace, well, it's something to be impressed by. But that's not taking anything away from Triumph. Keep in mind that Triumph is now on a pretty serious upswing, up 37% by this time last year in total sales. So they're definitely doing something right. But there's only so much nostalgia that you can sell when you're trying to pimp Tigers and Tridents, or the new sportier Trident, the Daytona. So I think that Triumph really does need to kind of grab a hold of its roots a little bit. I believe that if they're going to separate themselves even further, as I believe they should, let's see an honest to goodness big bore Daytona, something along the lines of maybe a Daytona 1200, basing that off of the Speed Triple RS. Or let's take a look at maybe turning that Street Triple back into the Daytona from whence it came. It sounds like that'd be a pretty sweet deal. Let me check in with you guys real quickly. Sovereign Knight is in. Skid saying Royal Enfield gets support from SNS too, which is super cool. Yes, they do. Oh, Skid's, yeah, hanging out with Ryan. Yeah, they make a big bore kit, which is pretty legit on that 650. But the Skid saying a 750 kit, which will be more moot here soon, and an 865 kit as well. So yeah, there's some very interesting things coming that you can do to a Royal Enfield. And guys, I'm just going to tell you this right now. I'm still a little bit smitten with that Continental GT. Great bike, fun bike. And I got to tell you, man, it doesn't accelerate as hard as my T120 does, but it offers up 90% of that part of the riding experience, maybe 85 with my bike being a little bit more tuned. But it doesn't really matter. That bike is significantly lighter. It feels more narrow. It's got a certain old school flavor to it that I don't think that many folks, I don't think that many folks, when they ride the Triumph, I think that what a lot of people end up doing is they buy the Triumph brand. And I don't think they're buying the motorcycle as much. And that's the other thing. It's kind of a weird point that I'm trying to get to. But here's the thing. If you buy a Royal Enfield motorcycle, you're not buying a Royal Enfield for the brand of Royal Enfield. Typically, you're buying that motorcycle because you truly enjoyed the experience of riding that machine. A Triumph, on the other hand, it's kind of like Harley Davidson, but for Europe and England and the rest of the world in some respects, in that you buy a Triumph. You don't necessarily buy a T120 or a Scrambler or something like that. You're buying a Triumph. And in that respect, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's no bones to be picked here. It's just a bit of an observation where Triumph does a phenomenal job of, as Harley Davidson does, both of them sell on nostalgia. Both of them have motorcycles that are functionally very old school. Both of them try to hearken to a past that is both real and a little bit make-believe. But all of that being said, they all are based around legendary types of machines and folks that rode them. So in those respects, yes, the brands are very similar. But damn, a Bonneville, dude. Bonnevilles are just that good. But I gotta say, the ride-by-wire technology, the throttle-by-wire technology gives you a little bit of a disconnect. As good as my throttle mapping is, and it took me 3 or 4 tries to really finally hone that in. And I say 3 or 4 tries, it was 3 or 4 adjustments over the course of maybe a couple of months. And I ended up just making it flat linear. In fact, I could make it even more aggressive through that mid-range just to make it feel more like a cable throttle. But with that ride-by-wire, you lose a little bit of something in there with that. Some will say even that the 900cc variants previous generation is a better bike, and it's a better bike because it's not hindered by all of that. Plus, it was carbureted. But that being said, when you start to look at other segments, though, and I mentioned Harley Davidson, and I mentioned that Pan America. So, kind of carrying the theme over from Triumph versus the World. This is something interesting. I've put out 3 videos on the Triumph Pan America. The first one was a ride-along video. The second one was a My Thoughts video, basically after the fact. And the third was like a second thoughts video. There's some things that I didn't quite, the points that I either didn't get to or points that I wanted to expand on. That's what I got into on that third video. I felt like this motorcycle deserved it. I don't usually do that. Although I do it fairly regularly, I don't do it for every bike that I ride. And the Pan America did something for me. And I got to tell you, dude, let me just show you this. All right. So this is something, the funny thing about this bike is it's such a striking looking thing. And one of the things that I did like the most about it is, just looking at that fairing up front. If you take this bike and you squint just right, here's a better view. Let me pop back over here. Okay, take a look at the front of this machine. If you squint, if you look just right, I mean, that looks like kind of the old bagger style front fairing in a way. It's the cool thing about Harley Davidson is they really did make this, that ST just looks good. They really did make this motorcycle their own take on a segment. And the reason why I like that so much, and this is one of the points that I was making in the video, is that they took the script and flipped it. Typically, you would have manufacturers that would take a Harley Davidson motorcycle and make their own version of it, right? Like insert Japanese manufacturer here with a V-twin and cruiser architecture. That's what they would do. And they would basically make a Harley Davidson knockoff. And that's why, a lot of Harley guys kind of frown on the Asian metric cruisers, is because they're trying to be like a make-believe in a way. Well, Harley Davidson did something cool here. Harley Davidson took that sentiment to heart. They did not copy anything from any other manufacturer in terms of the aesthetic when it comes to this motorcycle. They did a great job making the segment their own and kind of re-envisioning it with this bike. And that's one of the, it's just something about this motorcycle that just catches my eye. It catches my attention in a weird way. Like I don't know if it's like it, maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. Let me pull this one up real quick. Bear with me just a second, guys. Bear with me just a second. I'm trying to pull this page up. Oh. So just looking at Harv's Harley Davidson over here. But yeah, so this is, oh, hang on just a second. Totally screwed that up. Here we go. Okay, so here's the thing with this bike. The thing that I liked, and this is the ST, by the way. I cannot wait to ride that bike. In fact, I need to wait to ride that bike. There's a damn sure chance that this bike could end up coming home with me. And the reason why I say that is because it's their impression or their take on the class, but it does things so much better than every other bike that's out there. I'm going to get to a point eventually, I promise. The bike is so good on the highway, but so playful and so fun to ride. And other manufacturers would do well to take a page out of Harley Davidson's book when it comes to this motorcycle specifically. Yeah, it skids. You're about right. Yeah, it does pay me to say this. I will say this. There's one quirk about this bike that you have got to be very aware of, and that is the side stand on this thing. When the bike sits down, when you turn the bike off, the bike will kind of sit down a little bit. Even if you've already kicked out the side stand, you've got to be keenly aware of this, because the second you barely tip the bike over, the side stand hits the ground. And it doesn't lock in place. So you got to be careful that you don't dump the bike on accident. It's something that I picked up on pretty quick, and you just got to be keenly aware of it. But the main thing is, if you've got the bike with the automatic suspension, when it sits down, go to kick out the kickstand. If you're leaned over at all to the left, it'll hit the ground. So anyway, aside from that weird little quirk, this is easily one of my favorite motorcycles that I've ridden. And yes, Skids, it does pain me greatly to say that it's a Harley Davidson, but credit where it's due. And look, it really is honestly that good of a bike. My only question is, why can't they make this motorcycle, and why can't they make the Street Fighter with this engine, the Bronx with the 970, and have an honest to goodness Harley Davidson hot rod? And this is the other thing. Oh, and this is the other thing I wanted to talk about with the Pan America. I don't know why that video. So I do know why. Here's the funny thing. That video is in a weird spot because the post-ride review has more views than the ride review does, if you can believe that. But here's the funny thing. I don't understand. I can't even imagine why that is. The funny thing. Here's a view from the other side. What am I trying to say here? Okay, so it's funny because Harley Guy doesn't really accept this bike because it's not a real Harley. And that's one of the questions that I had in one of my other videos is this a real Harley? I mean, it's got the bar and shield right here. It says Harley Davidson, but I know a lot of Harley guys are going to say it's not a real Harley. And then other guys are going to look at it and go, well, it's a Harley. Why would I want that when I can get a Tiger 1200 or an Africa Twin? You know, and so they'll look at it like it doesn't really have a home. I look at it like it's a killer bike. It's just got something about it that I can't take my eyes off the thing. But there's going to be plenty of people that are going to have a problem with it. One of the other funny things about this bike, there's a shot of that front. I really like the front of that bike. I love that it is not trying to be something that it's not. One of the other things, though, and I'll be real honest with you, the guys at the dealership love riding it, but they don't really know what to make of it. And I think too many times, you know, you get wrapped up in the culture of a certain brand, and I hate to say it, but Harley Guy is going to be the reason why this bike doesn't succeed. Well, that and the fact that it's $20,000. Actually, that and the fact that it is, not trying to hide it from you, that and the fact that it is actually $20,549. Well, there's that little problem. So anyway, but I love the look of it. I love the fact that it's got a little bit of that throwback style front fairing, very reminiscent of, you know, a hot rod bagger from back in the day. I think that's super cool that they did that. A lot of potential here. Hopefully Harley Davidson they can capitalize on that potential and get us not only this machine, but some other motorcycles that can, carry that 1200 ST engine or Rev Max engine that's in the ST and the regular Pan America, that 150 horse engine. It doesn't need to be relegated to this bike. I will say this though. Yes. If you watch the ride along video, I go underneath an overpass. It's about 2/3 of the way into the video. And yeah, it's hanging the back of the bike out, and I'm rolling into the throttle, and it is lifting up the front of that bike. So it's pulling the front tire and spinning at the same time. It's a lively machine, guys. 150 horsepower will do that. And I don't know. It just kind of does something for me. Let's see if we got some more images. It's got, like, I think somebody mentioned just a second ago, kind of that old school, kind of almost a retro look to it in a way. It's like retro meets future. And that's the thing that I like how they blended. I like how they kind of blend the bar into the bar and shield into the front of that fairing. Man, it does something cool for me, man. Isn't that weird? Like how weird. I know that it's, I was kids say way better looking than a BMW GS. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Let me pull one of those up for you real quick. Bear with me just a second, guys. It may have just gone to blank screen. Hold on just a second. Bear with me just a second, fellas. I mean, seriously, look, this, I'm just going to pull one that looks halfway decent here. It's a GS 1300. Actually, let's do this. That's more like it. Yeah. So, I mean, the problem is that this is the quintessential dual sport, you know, sport touring, whatever. And the thing about this is that that's what, like the sport touring crowd, this is what they're looking for. So like this guy right here, that's what they're looking for is a bike like that. And the problem is, you know, when you start to this bike doesn't look like that. You know, it's got just a completely different cool flair and flavor to it. Now, granted, this is the ST, but you know, there's not an ST. If there is, it doesn't matter. This is the bike for me. And when it comes to, I don't know, how do I put it? When it comes to a bike that I would be more interested in, anyway, the Harley Davidson just seems to do a little bit more for me. Let me take a look at something else here. Yeah, like this. Let me get a better, well, we can roll with this. So this bike here, you know, this is, again, this is what you're looking for, you know, like a 6 or whatever gallon tank and, you know, range forever and the knobby tires and all of that. I like that and all, don't get me wrong, but I mean, dude, really, that's just a better looking machine right here. And plus, I'm not really a dirt guy when it comes to the big bikes. If I'm gonna be on dirt, I want something light, something I can sky. So anyway, there is that. The last point I wanted to get to, because this would be a bit of a short show, is this. What is going on, guys, with the Yamaha R9 and the super middleweights? You know, these bikes were supposed to have already been out by now. I know that the R9 is running into supply chain problems, whatever in the world that means. But the problem I think that we're running into right now is, you know, there's a lot of folks that have their own take on these bikes, right? I mean, it's a hell of a good looking bike in race trim, but I've got to ask a question. And I mean, I'm not saying this because I own a GSXR 1000. I'm saying this as a guy who's ridden a lot of different bikes, especially lately, including a GSXR 600, the GSX 8R, are the first couple of bikes that come to mind outside of my own. Is anybody really super excited about the super middleweights? You've got bikes like the R9, you've got the RCR 990, and you've got the Panigale V2. The RCR and the Panigale V2 for the United States market are checking in as near as it doesn't matter. The Panigale V2 is $16,000, and the RCR looks like it's going to be like $17,000, both of these for the street variants, at about $3,000, I think, for the track variants of either one of those. But it doesn't really matter. We're just talking about the street stuff. The problem is that the R9 comes in at $12,500, which is basically like bargain basement pricing if you're comparing that to what these other machines would sell for. But I'm not really sure if, damn it. I'm not really sure if there's enough of an interest here. Again, the problem, the boogeyman, is the GSXR 750. The R9 will never be able to deal with that bike on the street. And what I mean by on the street is just, I get where the R9 is coming from, and it's light and it does a lot of really cool things. And it's great right up until the old head shows up and just starts flexing 140 horsepower on a bike that's, 114, that's kind of the difference. And you can talk torque all you want. They both make basically the same torque, just at different RPM. So there's that. I would like to see this bike in the class making more power. I know that they're limited by the race class to 130 horsepower, but it's just limiting a motorcycle that doesn't need to be limited, in my personal humble opinion. So there is that. But also when it comes to the price points and other motorcycles in the class, there's really nothing left. In the super middleweights, there's only 3 right now. Kawasaki, if you're listening, turn the R900 into one of these things. Just throw a fairing on it and some clip-ons, and you're kind of there already. So that there's going to be a little bit more activity with a little bit lower price point in this class. And I think a lot of folks would be pretty hot for that. Plus you'd get an extra 10 horsepower over this thing with torque to match, basically, kind of, sort of. So there's that too. Some things that I would prefer to see in this lineup. And if other manufacturers are going to step up, now would be a phenomenal time to try to get something in through the 2025 tail end of 25, announce it, get it in for 2026. Because right now we're halfway through February and there aren't any reports, any reviews, any ride-alongs. There's nothing coming from the segment at this time. So I guess it's a bunch of hype, but we're just not seeing anything really hitting just yet. So I guess we shall see. I'm going to check in with you guys real quick. And again, tonight is a bit of a short show, so I'm going to be checking out here pretty soon. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Skids and Sovereign hanging out. Ryan say, waiting on the new CF Moto 700 class 4-banger. Yep, that's going to be a pretty sick bike. CF Moto, by the way, that bike might fall right into the range of super middleweight. It is of the right cubic centimeter displacement, albeit just. It's right there for it, with it being a 4-cylinder. Skid saying, one thing, that R9 shouldn't have any mechanical issues. The CP3 is perfect, and he's got a point. Everybody that's ridden a motorcycle with a CP3 has nothing but just good things to say about it. So I'm not ever going to question durability, or hell, even if it's enough power. Look, my Daytona is not really that far removed from this motorcycle in terms of specs. It's listed at 130 horsepower. With the tune that's on it, it might not, even with the tune in the pipe. My 955 is not that much more powerful, if at all, than the R9. And it weighs a little bit more too. I can tell you it's a great bike to ride. And damn it, it's an amazing motorcycle as long as you don't start comparing it to anything like the GSXR 750, or really almost any, like a GSXR 600, the one that I rode. Great bike, I can tell you that this motorcycle partial throttle is going to be a more rich riding experience. And I know that because it is mimicking my 955, which is T595, but it's a 955 Daytona. It's mimicking that bike very, very similarly in terms of power, wheelbase, riding position, all of that. So we'll just have to see. But at 12.5, it's going to be a really good bargain, and it's going to be low maintenance, and it's going to have all the doodads and technical gizmos. So you got to give credit where it's due. Let's see. Oh, Skids. Yeah. So CF Moto is doing some stuff right now, and their V4 is rumored to be just shy of 200 horsepower. So they're not messing around with that thing. But we'll see if it comes to the States. We're just not getting any kind of love right now when it comes to cool bikes. We talked about the Hawk 11. We're talking about the R9. We might as well talk about the XSR GP. Another phenomenal machine with a CP3 engine. It's not this bike. It's got a different chassis, but it's an old GP, old school racer type bike. How that bike didn't make it to the States is there needs to be an investigation into that. I'm afraid if they did, though, I would have already bought one. Hell, if they would have, I might have gotten rid of my Katana for it and never got my GSXR 1000. Skid saying CF builds a cafe racer and snubs us. Yeah. By the way, the new 750 with a fairing is a sharp bike. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. Bear with me just a second, guys. Sorry, I'm thinking Royal Enfield. We're gonna look at that one. 750. Let me see if I can pull up that one from images. Oh yeah, I think we looked at it, but I mean, there's a bunch of, you know, some renderings and things like that. But this bike with the fairing, I think one of the it was one of these spy shots. And the reason why that to me looks good is you've got the old alloy wheels and old school fairing, very reminiscent of the GP, by the way. Oh wait, that's yeah. So we'll see. I don't know if you can zoom in on this, but yeah, it's got a lot of it masked off and plasticed out. But yeah, that's just a it is a exhaust gas monitoring kit. That's what all this stuff is right here. All those lines going into the exhaust. They're measuring primarily. They're measuring temperature through here. Typically, you'll see these things all over the bike. So anyway, but that would be a pretty slick rig, and I'm pretty sure if they did come out with that, it would sell like mad. But anyway, it's bikes like this that here's a little bit closer rendition of that thing. We'll see how close it ever gets to this, but you know, motorcycles like this that offer up an honest to goodness retro riding experience. I got to tell you, man, they're a lot more endearing than, you know, some of these other bikes that are out there, and you can get them for a song and enjoy the hell out of these bikes and just, you know, no, you're not going to be setting any records, you know, acceleration or anything like that, but it's just going to be a hell of a fun bike to ride. And that's really where all the fun in riding is having fun. 200 horsepower muscle cruiser from Kawasaki. Yes, please. Yes, that would be cool to get that back. And Ryan, you're exactly right. If you get a leader bike out of CF Moto, that would be pretty sick. I mean, could you imagine CF Moto taking that the RCR 990 engine, which I think is 950, whatever, that parallel twin, and could you imagine them doing something with that? I mean, it's not outside of the realm of possibility, all things being equal right now. So anyway, but yeah, those are kind of the topics I wanted to chat with you guys about tonight. Not a lot of crazy stuff going on. What I'm going to do is I've got some stuff coming for the GSXR 1000. It's going to get the re-gear, a new rear tire, going to switch to a S23 rear tire on that bike. Going to keep the R11 up front. I like the feel of the R11, but I'm going to switch to an S23 out back. A little bit better street manners out of the 23 from what I understand. Very similar to the 22s, the S22. So in terms of just longevity, because the R11's already pretty well shot. The other thing is the ECU should be back in the next couple of days from its reflash. The first tune, not good. Was able to get a clone of my bike onto a dyno, and yeah, that tune, very ugly. I'm not mentioning any names just yet. I'm staying out of that, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, ECU, it drives me nuts that I'm not doing my own tuning too. That's something that I'm just, anyway, there's that, but that will be wrapped up hopefully here pretty quickly. The re-gear plus the reflash, that's going to get that bike, I think, right where it needs to be for now. It may eventually end up getting a full exhaust. If it ever does, great. But I mean, it wouldn't be realistically for peak power. It'll be more for mid-range. But that's pretty much it as far as the fleet goes. Trying to figure out what I want to do with the T-Bird right now. It's kind of gotten to a point where it's I love the bike, but I don't know if I want to keep it. So I'm going to have to kind of sleep on that a few times, but we'll see about that. But aside from that, guys, that's all we got for Two Wheel Tuesdays tonight. Go ahead and wrap it up. Thank all of y'all for stopping by and hanging out. If it's your first time, thanks for stopping by. Consider liking, subscribing, for sure. Subscribing, share. It helps the channel a lot, helps with all those algorithms. And my channel is more or less just a background noise generator. So if you like that kind of stuff, you're out there doing chores and you need something to listen to, that's what this channel is for. I've just incorporated some of the screen sharing stuff for folks that like to look at things as I'm talking about them. I can only do it for the live show. I can't do it for the individual, the standalone shows. But if you like that kind of stuff, hang out on the live show. But with that, guys, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And I hope to catch you on the next one. Take care.